Hey everybody, it's Matt. I hope things are going awesome in your world. Thanks for hanging out with me on my YouTube channel. I've been reading a whole bunch about angels this week, and I didn't even mean to. I was working in Ezekiel for some other reasons, but the first chapter of the book of Ezekiel in the Old Testament opens with this bizarro description of some angels that looks nothing like what I picture when I think of angels. Let's do the exercise here, you and me. What do you picture when you hear the word angel? Since I can't hear you because of the one-way nature of the medium, I'm just going to guess what you're thinking right now. One, you're either picturing a little chubby baby angel with a bow and arrow that looks kind of like Cupid. I think we all know that angel isn't really in the Bible anywhere. Or you're picturing maybe a more biblically accurate version of an angel, which would be the tough, masculine looking, robed or armored, almost soldier or messenger angel with the great big wings with the huge wingspan and the sword, and they kind of look like a person, but maybe they glow a little bit. I don't think we get that exact description anywhere in the Bible, but that representation is sort of a composite of a bunch of the details that we glean from other encounters around the Bible with more relatable human-like angels. There are clearly a bunch of different kinds of angels presented in the Bible, and the type that we're running into here in Ezekiel is the most mentioned type by name, and also definitely in the running for the most alien type of angel in the Bible. These are called cherubim. Now, a cherub is the first angel we see in the Bible. It's the one that guards the Garden of Eden. Lucifer is described in Ezekiel 28 as being a guardian cherub. And it's going to melt our brains here in a minute when we look at the actual description of what this type of angel looks like and then picture that as being Lucifer. So here's what I want to do. Since this is brutally hard for me to visualize and stretches the limits of my creativity, I thought it would be fun to see if we could nudge our imaginations a little bit by using an artificial intelligence art generator, one that I use a lot called Midjourney, to enter some of this text of the description of these angels from Ezekiel and see what it kicks out. What you're seeing on the screen right now is Midjourney, and as you can see, even if you enter an absurd prompt like this one for a 90s kids fruit drink advertisement with Bigfoot on a surfboard, it does a pretty good job of approximating what you want, and if you're willing to be patient and learn to speak its language and try a bunch of different iterations, you can get stuff that looks pretty cool and stretches the boundaries of the imagination. Obviously, this thing is no substitute for a real actual artist with real actual talent. I did a bunch of work trying to create this consistent character of Ezekiel so we could put him in different scenes and make the story pop a little more. But the plan is that as we go along, I'm going to use as often as possible the actual text of the Bible in little phrases, little chunks to prompt the AI art generator. And then I'm going to pick the best images and show you those. But they aren't all going to turn out. There are going to be some interesting rejects. So hang around until the end. After we wrap everything up, I'll show you a bunch of the most interesting failed prompts and some of the weirdest art that came out of it. Picking it up here at the beginning of Ezekiel 1, we got a young man named Ezekiel. He was from Jerusalem in the kingdom of Judah, and there was a political problem at this time. In the late 600s, early 500s BC, Babylon has become powerful. Their kings start taking an interest in Judea. They start taking promising young men from Judea as sort of hostages. And Ezekiel is one of these promising young men who gets taken as a hostage, probably along with Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And the book starts with him sitting on the banks of a river near Babylon, and then pow, the hand of the Lord is upon him, and he has this incredible vision that goes as follows. Ezekiel 1:4. Buckle up. He says, I looked and I saw a windstorm coming out of the north, an immense cloud with flashing lightning and surrounded by brilliant light. The center of the fire looked like glowing metal, and in the fire was what looked like 4 living creatures. In appearance, their form was that of a man, but each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were straight, their feet were like those of a calf, and gleamed like burnished bronze. It didn't matter how hard I prompted or what I tried. The AI here just really wanted to give us something that was sort of shadowy and obscured by fire and smoke. I think it was kind of ducking it, like what I used to do when I was learning to draw and I wasn't sure how to make hands. So I just always put like a mitten right there, a book. But still, it gives you a sense. You imagine being Ezekiel, even at this point already. How do you even relay what you've just seen? How can you have four faces? Well, we'll let the description go on. Under their wings, on their four sides, they had the hands of a man. All four of them had faces and wings, and their wings touched one another. Each one went straight ahead. They didn't turn as they moved. So I think he's describing a movement pattern that would be a little bit odd in the ancient world, but we're talking about linear movement while continuing to face forward, almost gyroscopic. Is that the right word? It's like when you play a first person video game, don't tune out if you're not into this kind of thing, but if you are, you're going to know what I'm talking about. You got two joysticks to control movement. One takes you forward, back, side to side. The other one pivots what is straight ahead. So you have these two axes, and that allows you to navigate through the world somewhat like you navigate through the real world. It almost sounds like he's describing something like that, but maybe just with one of the two control sticks. Maybe I'm reaching at this point. Let's keep going. Their faces looked like this. Each of the four faces had the face of a man, and on the right side, the face of a lion, and on the left side, the face of an ox. Each also had the face of an eagle. Their wings were spread out upward. Each had two wings, one touching the wing of another creature on either side, and two wings covering its body. Each one went straight ahead. Wherever the spirit would go, they would go without turning as they went. The appearance of the living creatures was like burning coals of fire or like torches. Fire moved back and forth among the creatures. It was bright, and lightning flashed out of it. The creatures sped back and forth like flashes of lightning. As I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the ground beside each creature with its four faces. This was the appearance and structure of the wheels. They sparkled like chrysolite, I don't know what that is, and all four looked alike. Each appeared to be made like a wheel intersecting a wheel. As they moved, they would go in any one of four directions the creatures faced. The wheels did not turn about as the creatures went. Their rims were high and awesome, and all four rims were full of eyes all around. When the living creatures moved, the wheels beside them moved, and when the living creatures rose from the ground, the wheels also rose. Wherever the spirit would go, they would go, and the wheels would rise along with them, because the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. When the creatures moved, they also moved. When the creatures stood still, they also stood still, and when the creatures rose from the ground, the wheels rose with them, because the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. Then it goes on to describe sort of a celestial litter, not like trash or like a bunch of little kittens that are born, but like the stand that in the ancient world servants would carry someone of high rank upon. And it seems to be suggesting that the glory of God is residing on a throne on this celestial litter as he is being moved about. You got Ezekiel there. He's barely able to take this in. And over the next 10 chapters, God starts laying out all the ways that his chosen people have violated their covenant, their relationship with God. And God's presence has been physically manifest as being with his people for centuries. It was there in the desert wanderings and Exodus and the books after that. It was there in the Ark of the Covenant. It was there when the temple was dedicated 400-ish years before the events that we're reading about here. But the passage ends with God showing Ezekiel a vision of his presence in the form of a dark cloud coming up out of the temple in Jerusalem and moving away from his people, indicating God isn't going to live with his people anymore in that way. And then it's just a few years later, and the Babylonian army physically shows up and physically carries out the vision that Ezekiel's had by fully destroying the temple, fully destroying Jerusalem, and carrying away the Jewish people into captivity in Babylon. But in the midst of this terrible vision, we do get a few more details about the creatures. We learn that they are called cherubim. We learn that they've got eyeballs on their wings and stuff as well. And again, as you can see, it feels like the most exciting thing that's going to happen all day when you start reading this passage is this peek behind the curtain of this spiritual realm and this other world of God. But then there's huge history and theology happening here as well. If you're Ezekiel and you're writing all of this stuff down, how do you communicate this? Because you've got no common point of reference to describe whatever it is that you're seeing. If you and I were trying to relay this to each other, if we saw something like that, we'd go to comic books and sci-fi and CGI stuff that we've seen, but it sounds like Ezekiel is describing something that is at least somewhat technological or maybe even biotechnological in nature. And that's caused people's imaginations to run wild. Not even recently. I mean, going back to ancient times, people have been obsessing about what is it that this guy saw on that day next to that river that he would describe with these words. More recently, people have speculated that what he was describing is some kind of vehicle, some sort of thing that God built. And on the one hand, I'm quick to jump on that and be like, why would God build a vehicle? God builds natural things. But wait a second. No, God does design things and build technical things. I mean, he built a throne. Where did that come from? That's technology. Clearly, I mean, we're talking about wheels. He designed wheels that are designed to make movement happen. I mean, even if the blueprints only exist in his mind, there's a schematic for that technology that God made and chose to use. How does he integrate that technology with these created beings that are described in this passage? I have no idea. But I imagine that if I saw whatever Ezekiel is saying that he saw, I would go right to some sort of futuristic jump jet or helicopter or vessel for fitted for space travel, or I don't even know what. Now, look, I'm not trying to say that I think God's an alien or we live in a simulation or anything like that. I don't think that, but I also don't think it's totally insane to imagine that Ezekiel is describing a God designed technological or biotechnological thing in this particular passage. And I also think it's okay for our imagination to run a little bit wild with that. Because, I mean, for crying out loud, you're seeing these images, they're fun, they're interesting, but even an AI that can go and scrape all of the ideas from all the things that we've come up with on the entire internet can't fully comprehend this either. I think my favorite image that I got out of the AI in this whole process was when I started telling it, nope, make a crayon drawing like you're 5 years old, and it got it right. I think this one right here maybe captures the whole thing the best. So then that begs the question, why is this even in the Bible? Why even bother? And I think there's an answer for that. I think in the same way that the transfiguration in Matthew 17 in the New Testament gives us just a little hint at what it looks like when you pull back the curtain and get a peek of the full glory of the divinity of God. So I think this is another one of those places in the Bible where you get a little peek behind the curtain, and it's awesome. It's awe-inspiring. It's other. Now, obviously, we're very used to God manifesting in incarnational ways throughout the Bible. He makes himself knowable. He shows up in a burning bush. He shows up looking basically like a person to talk to Abram and Sarai at that tent. He shows up and he has a physical wrestling match with Jacob out in the desert. And then, I mean, the granddaddy of them all in the incarnation in Christ in the New Testament. And then Jesus hangs out with people. He's very present. We're used to God doing very incarnational, relatable things, but also just by logic and reason, we have to know that God is bigger and other than just a really good version of us. And there are a few places in the Bible where we get a peek at that. And I, for one, find that hugely reassuring because I've been around the block enough to know that if there is to be deliverance, salvation, hope for this whole thing, this whole world and the human problem, it's going to have to come from something more powerful than just an exaggerated version of us. It's going to have to come from the all-knowing, all-powerful, unlimited initiator and sustainer of all things. And I would expect that if you actually put eyes on that great being, on God, it would be more than you could comprehend or put into words or express with an AI art generator. I tell you what, though, my friends, I would love to sit down and watch this video with Ezekiel and see if at any point in here he would be like, whoa, 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 pause. That's actually getting pretty close to what I saw. Or if more likely, he'd just laugh at me the whole time because of whatever this is. Speaking of whatever this is, AI art, right? What do we do with that? This was supposed to be a 1 day, maybe 2 day project, and it turned into 6 weeks. It's the second longest it's ever taken me to edit and put together a video. Very few of these images that you've seen were just, oh, I type in a thing, good enough, we put it over here. Man, there's a lot that goes into it. That painting of God visiting Abram and Sarai at their tent near the forest, the trees of Mamre, That took me almost a whole work day. At any rate, I'm going to make all of the images in this video available to everybody who supports the program at patreon.com/TMBH. Whether you're already a supporter or if you go and sign up now, if you support at any level, those will be there for you. So make sure to check out Patreon or your email if you are already a supporter of the program. Thank you a ton for making it possible for me to tear into a super deep dive, surprisingly complex project like this one. Also, if you like these kind of conversations about the Bible, whether you've been around it for a long time or you're just kind of getting curious about what it is and how it works, I've got a daily podcast called the 10-Minute Bible Hour that I think you might like. It's meant to be fast and fun, but also, again, very deep divey, where we just pick a book of the Bible and we work straight through it a little bit each day, talking about it like normal humans. It's a good way to make the Bible a part of your daily rhythm, and I thought you might like it. If not, no worries whatsoever. Okay, I owe you an outro reel here of all of the weirdest images that didn't quite work or didn't quite make the cut for the video. So I'm going to get that to you right now. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on my YouTube channel. Let's do this again soon.